Let's get started. All right. Okay, I'm Aaron Hughes. I'm the president and CTO of 6Connect, here just as an operator, volunteer helping out with Best Current Operational Practices track. Room's a little lighter than usual. I think we're up against a data center track, so is what it is, but I'm glad to see that there's at least some people in here who are still interested in Best Current Operational Practices. So it's a really simple agenda, just a quick history. First, how many people in here for the first time never been to a BCOP track? Awesome, about half of you. Okay, so what is a BCOP? Why BCOP? This has been a challenge over the last, well, frankly, 20-ish years. We have a problem with having single repositories of definitive useful data for operational practices. You find operator groups like this exist all over the world. You get great presentation with really rich content about all kinds of things, usually problems and solutions, primarily network related, primarily operator related. And as soon as you walk out the door, that data is already stale, right? Because you start to think about it, how could have you done something different? Maybe your colleagues have started to think about it, how could they have done something different? The content isn't really vetted, right? You're not really having heavy discussion inside of the room. And when you want to find solutions to these problems, if you're not in a meeting like this, you go to either your colleagues or maybe Pound IX, or maybe you read a book or look at a wiki, or you can go to good old, well, I'll say Google, but a qualified search engine to find a potential solution for your either problem or what you're trying to implement. Or perhaps you're going to your vendors, or maybe your customers are going to their vendors, and so Big C or Big J says, you know, this is the right way to implement something, the best current operational practice for implementing something using our gear. As we all know, that's a bit challenging, and it's not necessarily the best way to do things. So, so this is a problem, right? We have outdated information, inaccurate information. The archives are, you know, in all of the operator groups across the globe are challenging to search because there's no single repository for it. And this is the idea behind a solution to that problem. What are these for? These are for you, right? And these are for your customers. These are for your colleagues. This is for anybody who asks. You know, someone says, "Hey, what's the best way to subnet an IPv6 allocation?" You can go, "Yeah, here's a document, a great guideline for, you know, a well-vetted document on how you should do that," right? The audience is really anybody, right? There's a mix of different types of people. We find that, you know, certainly the idea behind the documents is they cater to people who don't know, right? They're looking for an answer. They need something to read. It's a single source that is a good place to start. Should be a solid document. What we see in these kind of meetings and on lists are a variety of folks. Anywhere from, I have a problem and I'm looking for someone to write a document to solve it, or I am a subject matter expert in some area and I'm happy to provide data, or I'm a good author and I'm happy to write a document. So any kind of mix of people anywhere in the arena is all great for best current operational practices. So if you fit any kind of role in that area, we're very happy to have your participation on the list or in these meetings. That's right. So the solution. Obviously, we want something that is an open, community-driven, bottoms-up solution. This is all about community-written, community-vetted. We know it's a best current operational practice because there's enough people that participate to say, yes, this is actually the right solution. These need to stay current, right? So documents that are posted that get ratified really need to be read on a regular basis and say, is this still the right thing? And you should do this when you're a subject matter expert in an area. If you read something, you know, please do say, this isn't actually the best. Let's have this discussion on the list, and this is why I think that. Let's go over the information and get it revetted, and maybe this should change. Everybody is absolutely welcome to participate. Generally speaking, by the way, these are sort of an 80-20 model. This is about the common case. We're not looking for writing documents on side cases or really weird one-offs. That's not useful to the global community. That's only useful for, you know, very specific one-off cases. There are some documents that have them noted in sort of the bottom section of, yeah, here's some one-off cases where you probably want to do some other things. But generally, keep in mind the idea is to make these fairly, global common practices, not I have this one little tiny edge case that we should write down. Although you're welcome to do it, just want to make sure everybody sort of understands the idea behind the original model, and if that changes again, this is community driven, so feel free to change it. So what's available today? On bcop.nanog.org, which is the current repository for all the best current operational practice documents, there's certainly some stuff to help you with the actual process, right? There's the development process is documented there, which again is a document that is welcome to go through the process and can be updated at any time by the community, vetted, re-ratified, and become the current process. There's also a BCOP template there, so if you've got anything that you think should be a good document, you want to start authoring one, there's a nice template you can download and start your authorship. Currently for BCOP documents, we have one on IPv6 subnetting, one on public peering exchanges, that has to do with how you configure them, what kind of things should be exchanged, etc. One on extension headers, some IPv6 security myths, some peering and transit guidelines for v6. Those are available on the BCOP wiki, which you can see the URL there, bcop.nanog.org. And of course, the majority of the work is done on the mailing list, and all the discussion for vetting is there. Those are welcome to happen in this room as well, but really, that should happen between meetings. The idea is to bring up ideas here, do all the work between meetings, and run them through the process when we get to a meeting. If you're not on the mailing list and you're interested in this best current operational practices, I would strongly suggest you go to mailman.nanog.org and subscribe to the BCOP mailing list. That's where all the work gets done. So what's happened since NANOG 58? Well, to be honest, not a ton. One of the challenges that we've found in the between NANOG time is that there's not a heavy amount of discussion on lists. There's usually, some amount of document discussion, some work gets done in the background. People feel this is very important and are actively writing documents, but not a lot has been, nothing has been finished since the last NANOG. I know that there's been some significant progress on a few very big documents, which is highlighted in a slide coming up here, but nothing's actually up for community vetting or to be ratified at the moment. We did do some work in some sort of basic operational work over the last several months. The original set of servers and lists were on inappropriate places. Today they've moved to bcop.nanog.org. NANOG's been kind enough and supports the BCOP track, and we've moved the mailman list there as well. We also did some work on converting the documents which were originally in good old Microsoft doc format to a wiki, so we could have people easier to access, easier to contribute, easier to edit. So I think the majority of that has been done. I think there are a couple of documents that need to be converted still, and thank you for the work of Valerie, Chris, and Network Utility Force for getting that done. And I know there's also a search in progress for a nice, easy wiki to PDF converter so that we can hand off these documents in a nice way for the global internet to actually search these and see the ratified version to documents in an easier format. In other words, the wiki is intended for the people who are actually working on them actively, and in some sort of PDF, easy searchable one for people who are actually reading them. So, things in progress. This is what I know of. Now, I know there are some people doing some work in smaller circles, and I've started to hear rumblings in other forums of people looking to use these as reference documents or pointers where they think the content might be better served in a BCOP that they can reference rather than reinvent the wheel, which I think is actually fantastic, right? We've got some real organic growth, which is nice. Security standards, I know is being worked on. I think MetaKKO is working on a massive BCOP for security, and I really look forward to seeing that one out on the list. I don't know if she's here. I don't see her. There's a couple of different updates that need to happen to the public peering exchange document. I think several people have started reading that, particularly as it relates to OpenIX and some standards related to what should happen on route servers. There's been some discussion on whether or not IXP prefixes should be filtered from IGPs and consequence and benefits. And I think there were a couple other changes that were looking to be made to that document as well. I don't know what the active status is, and certainly anybody who's got those is welcome to come up to the mic and talk about them. I know there was a request for a document on filtering. Had to do with references to BCP 38 and 84. Those are IETF BCPs, my apologies. But I haven't seen an update on those in about a month on the list. So again, love to hear from anybody who's working on those what that is. There was work on preventing amplification attacks, and this is a great example, right? We just had a presentation about an hour and a half ago on amplification attacks, and the fact that some of the filtering is not good enough, and we really need to do some things about what the best current operational practices against preventing amplification attacks is. There's also some work on routing announcements to downstream customer standards, sort of like should you announce default or not by default, and just sort of your standard set of prefixes that should be announced for different types of customers downstream. There was some discussion on list. I'm not sure if anybody actually took on the authorship to own that document, but I'm going to poke the list again to see if anybody has done that. And if there are other things that are being worked on actively, I'd encourage you to come up to the mic and talk about them. But this is what I know of. So I didn't have a heavy agenda for today, so I just wrote a quick one here and figured we could either use this for workshop time or use this for open mic time. So this is the rough agenda. So updates and progress on any of the things that I mentioned or anything else that you have going on would be great to hear about. Any requests for topics, so if you've actually got something you're looking for a document for, love to hear about that on the microphone as well. We can either pair you up with an author or just take the note and send it out to the list and request one. Any kind of pairing that needs to be done with authors and subject matter experts, happy to do that in this room. I'm also looking for volunteers to assist with project management between the time of NANOGs, because frankly I haven't had the resources to help achieve the best success possible of having rich content at each of these meetings. So I'm going to be asking for volunteers for that. John Curran wanted to give an update on internet governance as it relates to best current operational practices. Then an open mic, and certainly workshop time available for those that are interested in doing so. So that's really it. So we could start with updates from anybody in this room. Anybody have any updates on anything that's being written or want to add something to that list? Mr. Smith.
Hey, Mike Smith from EdgeCast. I'm actually one of the original authors on the public exchange doc. So that document is actually meant to be both for people who are running exchanges and people who are connected to exchanges. So it has data on what are the best common practices for both sides of that relationship. Along with the updates with the route servers, et cetera, we're also looking at adding some MAC address filters and other things to protect the integrity of an exchange, which also then relate directly to kind of what we would expect to see from someone connected to the exchange, particularly related to a single MAC address versus multiples. So if you have some opinions on that, it would be great to get those up on the wiki. Right now, there really isn't any discussion happening on the wiki, so it would be good to see that.
Thanks, Mike. Anybody else have any updates on anything that's being worked on or response to Mike? No. Okay, fair enough. Also, one of the things I didn't put up here, which is an interesting topic, is since we converted everything from documents to wiki, the idea behind an author's token has kind of disappeared a little bit. So I'm looking for some feedback on the challenge of how do we manage who has the editing token for a document in a wiki. I've never done document management using a wiki, but this was suggested by the community the last time we talked about it. So today there's only really one set of credentials. That means you can either edit or not. So I'd love to have some just some help with discussion either on list or in this room on how to resolve that issue. So today, if you want the token, you just email the list and we'll sort out temporary credentials for things. But I'd love to hear any kind of ideas on how we manage that going forward. And certainly, the idea behind an open wiki means it needs management. And again, someone would need to manage those cycles. So either it's going to be full of junk and spam, or we need to figure out a way to lock it down. So today we've gone sort of the swing the pendulum, the lock it down way, and certainly open discussion on the list or in this room about that. Okay. Requests for topics. Anybody have requests for topics that we should document, send out the list, find people for?
Given what we've been seeing, particularly with the presentations today, I'd love to see some best common practices around subverting and configuring against DNS amplification attacks.
Anybody want to be a volunteer to be an author for that topic? Subject matter expert? Okay, we'll send it out to the list and see if we can find somebody. I know that topic's been discussed a couple of times. We'll see if we can find an author and a subject matter expert. Okay, so for exactly this reason, we're looking for some volunteers to assist with project management for time between NANOGs. Greatly appreciate anybody who's got cycles to help with that management to speak up. It is a little bit of work, but we'd really appreciate the help so that this becomes much more rich.
Hi, my name is Richard Jefferson. I'm with ERA. I'd like to volunteer to assist with the project management between NANOGs. I do have some cycles to do that, and I'm offering this up as an individual member of NANOG.
Thank you, Richard. Much appreciated. We'll certainly poke you off list, and we can help. We can use your help. Thank you very much. Anybody else? All right, fair enough. What's that? Go ahead.
So what I did also is I've been kind of watching the mailing list itself.
Sorry, Chris, who are you?
Sorry, Chris Grundeman with the Internet Society, and also helping out with the BCOP efforts here in NANOG. And so I've been watching the NANOG list for a while, just flagging just messages that sent to the list that I think seem like they could parlay into BCOPs. So a couple of things that have popped up is Ethernet OAM and BCPs around that. There was an email specifically to the NANOG list saying, please, are there any yet? Also, deaggregation and strict filtering. This was one was specific to IPv6, but I think that probably also applies to IPv4, and that may be something that changes as we go forward. And then, using IRRs was another one. So those are a few that I saw just kind of fly by as topics, people asking for help, that I think if we take that and codify that into actual documents, instead of just replying on the email list over and over again or answering the same question, we can probably put something together around some of these that pop up. So again, volunteers needed either just to provide expert data and information, or shepherds to edit the documents and put them together.
Thanks, Chris. All right. Mr. Curran.
Hi, John Curran, President and CEO of Aaron. So this is a plea for help from this room. So Aaron covers 25 different economies, governments, and I get to go out and meet with a lot of them on occasion, and a lot of them realize how important the internet is becoming to the social development in their country, the economic development of their country. Governments are paying a lot of attention to the internet because it's changing their people, it's changing their economy, it's changing their businesses. So I guess it's good news because they're paying attention to us, and that's a wonderful thing. Governments see the internet very differently than this room sees the internet. governments see the internet as a tool, and sometimes it's a tool that works great, and sometimes it's a tool with sharp edges that cuts into their businesses or their citizens. And so one of the things governments are really good at is regulating things. And it's pretty common for me to go out and get a question from someone like, we seem to have a lot of spam, and we'd like to fix that. And we're ready to pass the right laws to do that. Or we seem to have a lot of cyber attacks, and we'd like to fix that, and we'd like to pass the right laws to do that. Now, first thing, it doesn't matter what solutions we say. If 25 governments choose 10 different solutions and start regulating them, we're going to have a mess. Second thing is that the way governments do things is they get people in a room, usually people they've invited. 10 or 20 well-known parties get in a room and they argue over what exactly should be done and not done. You may not have a seat at that table, and the outcome may not actually reflect best practices. It may reflect, who has the loudest voice, who has the most influence on a committee, whatever. So I spent a lot of time thinking about long-term internet things. In early 1990s, I was working on this IPNG thing that I guess is on the network now called IPv6. We spent a lot of time worrying about the internet 10 years and 15 years out. In the next 5 years, because of the attention to the internet, we're going to have governments seeking solutions to public policy problems, okay? And that means they're going to be seeking solutions to spam and DDoS attacks and a whole bunch of other things. And when that happens, if there are well-recognized best current operational practices, it's possible to channel their love and energy into looking at those solutions and saying, oh, I want to cut down on DDoS attacks, I need to cut down on botnets. To cut down on botnets, apparently I need to cut down on random packets and do reverse packet filtering. So, as much as this is a great educational effort, and it should continue, and the sharing is important so you can all run great networks with good hygiene, it's also strategically very important to get good technical operational practices written down, because there's going to be a lot of people looking for answers over the next 5 years, and right now there's not a good set. There's a few from the IETF. The folks in RIPE actually do a little more operational procedures than in this region. They have a couple to work from. But this is very important because people are going to start moving into trying to improve the network, and that'll be non-voluntary measures. And so what you want to make sure is when they get to that point, the things they find are a set of documents that you believe are technically the right things to do, because it is coming. So I ask you all, get involved, help Aaron, help Chris make this happen. Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks, John. Okay. Well, I've got nothing else on the agenda. This is all open mic, and it's up to you. So if you have anything you want to talk about, anything you want to add, anything you want to change, mics are yours.
Two thoughts as just sitting back in the room. One is maybe we should have and I honestly just looked at the wiki site on my phone for the first time in the past 5 minutes. I haven't been on the site in a while. But maybe we should have a more open part of that where there can actually be some collaboration going on for topics. So that people don't have to collect them on the mailing list. We actually collect them on the wiki, and the discussion goes on there. We all love mailing lists, but they have their downfalls and positives and negatives. And I think wiki is more accessible to people now than mailing lists for a lot of things like this, especially documents. And secondly, I think one of the other things we can think about is how do we bring other people outside of this community who are in this room into creating documents that are important for all of us, whether it's in the packet pushing space or DNS space or name your flavor enterprise space. There's lots of networks in the world that have very different characteristics than service provider networks, and they all need operational best practices. I'm not sure I have an answer to that, but I think it's important for us to think about other types of networks other than just service provider networks.
Thanks for those comments. You're the third person I've heard from today that suggested that the wiki would be a good place for managing topics and state, and I will send that out to the mailing list to make sure nobody has any objections, and certainly if anybody has an objection, stand up now and here. But otherwise, we'll go ahead and execute that. I think that makes great sense as well. In terms of outreach to other people and what's going on in other operator forums, that's also a suggestion I've heard a couple of times, and I think we can have some folks from other regions update maybe the wiki and the mailing list, and perhaps present in these forums going forward, just an update, or maybe I'll see if they can at least put a deck together that someone can proxy present to show what's going on with those efforts as well. I know there are a lot of them. We've certainly seen things around things like RIPE 501, 503, BCP 38, et cetera. So absolutely agree with you, and thank you very much for those comments.
Just a quick follow-up. Maybe we should have links to those documents on the wiki.
So I would agree with that sentiment in a very big way. Unfortunately, there isn't a central repository in any other region, and they have a similar problem to this region with the archive and replacement of presentations. So it's hard to know when those things get updated. So I'd ask. I'd be happy.
Is this a library science problem?
Yeah, potentially, yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where you kind of have to ask those respective communities to take ownership of updating those things, which I think we can get together, right? I mean, it just takes a little bit of work from the community to get us there. But I absolutely agree with that. I think that's a great idea. Yeah, thank you.
David Conrad from First West. Andrew actually took some of what I was going to say. I think there needs to be a mechanism by which these BCOPs or the equivalents in other regions can be coordinated in a global nature, because, sort of leveraging what John was saying, there is, how to put it, an interest in being helped to understand the best ways of ensuring that legislation, which is coming in many countries, is minimally damaging. And this desire actually comes from folks who are trying to write some of this legislation, so I've been informed. So, having a sort of a global repository, or even better, a globally coordinated set of documents would be extremely helpful. And just to reiterate what John was saying, this stuff will become increasingly important as more and more governments begin to realize that this internet thing probably isn't going to go away as much as they might like it to. The other point that I want to make is, if you can put the URL for the mailing list back up, because if you go to mailmail.nanog.org, it says it works. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Personally, I wholeheartedly agree with you as well, by the way. I know there are some other efforts in other regions that are very similar to this. And we've, as a handful of individuals, have made some effort into helping to globally facilitate and enable a way for coordinated documents to come to exist. It's been slow and a little bit challenging, but I assure you there are many members of all kinds of global communities trying to solve that problem, and I would encourage you to join in as well. No, go ahead, Chris.
So Chris Glendeman again. To that point, I can give a quick update, at least as far as what I know specifically. I know there's definitely been interest in Latin America within kind of the LACNIC community and LACNOG community in starting something like this, and they've definitely started discussions on it. I don't know how formalized that is at this point. Also in Africa, there's been some very strong interest in getting this started, kind of alongside AFRINOG and AFRINIC there as well, kind of following that region's perspective. And in Europe, the RIPE area, so there is a RIPE BCOP BOF now. It hasn't morphed into a full working group yet, but there's a mailing list set up, and they've had birds of feather sessions at least the last RIPE meeting, if not 2 so far, and there'll be another one in Athens next week. So those are all kind of coming together. One of the things with that is that, you know, what's happening in a lot of these other communities is as they go to start up this BCOP process, they run into almost exactly the same set of administrative problems that we've had here. And so one of the nice things or interesting things we have as a challenge in front of us and as an opportunity is to kind of pave that road. We're a little bit further along than most of the rest of the world in this respect, at least within the operator communities. This NANOG BCOP track has, you know, been talked about for, I don't know, formally talked about probably for 5-7 years. And now within, you know, we're 2 years into actually really getting the track going and moving through meetings and getting the mailing list up and working. And so we have a little bit of a template that other folks can follow. But really, you know, we need to keep pushing on that and formalize all of it, get the wiki working and things, and we can kind of provide that, you know, turnkey solution for other operator communities who want to do this. And then once there are multiple operator communities working, then it starts to make sense where, you know, you have these overlaps and global coordination starts to actually make sense and can be really fruitful. So just another thing to think about as we're pushing forward into this is that, you know, you're having an impact not just on a single document or on a little bit of, you know, project management or some time spent on a mailing list, but really paving the way for what could very well become a very significant global institution in this BCOP process.
Thanks for those comments, Chris. Yeah, I would just echo that and say that this is one of the greatest things that we can do is create bottoms-up, open, community-driven anything, right? Best current operational practices, policies, but it's also one of the greatest challenges to get in place in that there is no top-down approach to communicating effectively to say, hey, start up an open bottoms-up community-driven process, go, right? So it is great to be able to at least set an example of how we can do it in one operator community, and if other communities are interested in doing that, and you hear people talking about it, you might point and say, hey, at least, you know, here's some people that have been working through the challenges and have gotten through the hurdles of creating one. Or do it a different way, right? It's up to each community, but certainly figuring out a way to get them coordinated is an interesting challenge in the way that we've set up all of these operator forums, and would love to hear everybody's input on those kind of things, again, on either list, or we'll try and set up some kind of wiki space for that kind of communication as well. So still open mic. Anybody have anything else I'd like to bring up? Well, fantastic. Thank you, everybody, for your time, and please do sign up for the mailing list and encourage others to participate.